over my career frequently, I've challenged leaders to have tough, courageous conversations, and I get pushback. And I can see it. You can get resistance. People may not like you. It may be a hard conversation. It may stir the pot. There might be other problems that come out of having a conversation like that. But there's great, tremendous benefit in having these conversations. And there's one thing that's a trick to go about it that's going to decrease your anxiety. And that is how asking curious questions is a big part of the solution. So we're going to talk about that today, and just thinking of a real situation, somebody that knew she had to talk to another leader and is thinking about how to go about it. And then all of a sudden, hey, I can just ask a question in a non-judgmental, open-ended fashion, and that may solve the problem. Yes, it may. It may very well solve the problem. It may very well solve the problem because it's getting them to think and not act out of emotion. Today, we're going to talk about the impact of great questions on your leadership. And I'm excited because at the end of the episode, what you're going to have is ideas on how to formulate questions, on how to approach these conversations, on how to get the issue solved without actually even having to give feedback. I mean, there are times for sure when you need to confront the issue head on and share your concern directly and share how you want it resolved. And there are a lot of times when the problem is just starting to arise, a simple, curious, open-ended, genuine question, hey, I want to know more about your approach to this situation, is going to get them to think, and it's going to solve the problem and solve it fast. Huge benefit. So welcome to today's episode of the Decide Your Legacy podcast. Today's episode is on three benefits of asking curious questions as a leader, how it's going to impact your leader. And by the end of the episode, you're going to be inspired. So I'm Adam Gragg. I'm a legacy coach, and I'm a family therapist. Been a family therapist for over 25 years. I'm the founder of Decide Your Legacy, and we help businesses and leaders live courageously. And by the way, everybody is a leader. You have influence on your family. Leadership is influence. You have influence in your neighborhood, with your friends, with your family, with your church, with your volunteer organizations. The list goes on. You have influence, and take it seriously. So, as I do every episode, I want to share with you one scary action that I have taken recently. And the reason I do that is because nothing is more important to your mental health than facing your fears, and nothing is more damaging than taking the easy road and playing it safe. So what I did is I was having a rough go at it recently, and it was because I was triggered emotionally by situations. I get triggered when there's a lot of change in my life, and there's a lot of change in my life right now. I mean, I lost my dog, and my daughter graduated from high school, and then now she's in college in Boston, hired a new employee. I've had changes in business structure, just a lot of things that are going on. And when I'm in a vulnerable situation, I often can think about how I could potentially be rejected or abandoned. And I have, and I don't even necessarily, I'm not even aware of it, but it was me actually going and talking to some friends that I'm struggling and then processing it with them. They were able to help me. Two of them were able to really help me to see, like, Adam, this is a reaction to basically being hurt in the past, and you're worried about being hurt again. That was super helpful. I didn't sleep for a few nights, and then I got some sleep. So I struggle with overthinking. I struggle with anxiety. What is your struggle with asking questions and facing difficult relationships and dealing with things? I want you to think about that. As you go through this content, you're going to get some ideas on how you can face difficult things in your life. So at times, it's like, and it makes sense that, that if I'm going to go and even ask a question to somebody, I could get rejected. Even asking and being curious, like a stranger, for example, they could reject me by their body language, by their tone. It could be something that's going to lead to rejection. And it helps me to think, and I want you to think about how questions can change somebody's life. There are things that I call them I call them superpower questions in the coaching process, that when we ask these specific questions to clients, it can make a serious perspective shift that can help them to see clearly in order to make a big major shift. And I can look back and think of people that have had the courage to ask me questions that specific question has changed my life. One in particular is, what would you do, Adam, if you had more confidence? I mean, 10 times more confidence, 7 times more confidence. How would you handle this situation? And when they ask me that question, when somebody's asked me a version of that, what would you do here if you were more confident? It's gotten me to step back from my life and say, I would handle it very differently, in a much different fashion. And it's given me insight to insecurity that I haven't wanted to actually face or be aware of. I've had friends that have helped point out to me, not directly, but through questions, that I have self-confidence issues that are apparent to other people, and I still struggle with seeing that, but they are based on me not facing things in my past and carrying that with me. But it's the questions that have made the big difference for me to give me that kind of clarity. So as you go through this content, think about how you can ask questions. Curiosity is going to help other people change and show that you care and get to the bottom of the issue much quicker than you going out and directly giving feedback. So if you think of how you influence people, there's this influence pyramid that I got out of The Anatomy of Peace, a great book by the Arbinger Institute. And it's also, I think, referenced in The Outside Perspective, another book by the Arbinger Institute. And the very bottom level, the most influential foundational level of influence, is building the relationship and developing a heart of peace in the relationship. You have to have a heart of peace, which means you're not at war with them and competing. You're actually wanting to help. And it's these questions and the curiosity that gives us that foundation in the relationship. You build the relationship. So I bet you struggle with this. I bet you're like me. Think about situations where, you keep second guessing and talking yourself out of actually reaching out and having a conversation. And it's because you are stuck in the outcome. You want one certain outcome. You're trying to control it. And that's not what I want you to do. So we're going to think of the 3 big benefits that you can actually have and you can engage that are going to benefit you as you ask questions. So one first big benefit is when you ask questions, it's going to provide a level of clarity to other people. You go into it and you have good, curious questions based on the situation. So let's just say that you perceive that somebody is behaving in a way where they're procrastinating a lot. You want to address it with them. And a simple question could be, how could you approach this differently that might impact the timeline? And they're thinking about it and thinking like, well, I don't know. Maybe they respond saying, I don't really know. But you're not leading them to a specific answer. It's a non-judgmental question because they've articulated that they have some level of procrastination in their life. I mean, maybe they've shared it with you, but maybe you've just seen it in their behavior because they're frustrated by their lack of meeting deadlines. And your question of how could you change the process potentially could have a big impact. And they're going to see that. So you get to give somebody the gift of clarity as you ask them for information. And there's 2 things that give people clarity. They're open-ended, non-leading questions. So let me really define what that is. An open-ended question means it's not going to require a yes or no or a quick response. So, describe to me the recipe is not an open-ended question because they're going to research whatever that recipe is you're referencing, and then they're going to want to give you that recipe and describe it to you. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about here. An open-ended question is something like, what makes this important? What do you want here? What are you up against? What are we up against? How does this align with your values? How have you been successful in this area in the past? What does success look like for you? So you're asking them, what does success look like for you with your schedule? Because they've shared that they're frustrated about their schedule. Great, powerful question. And a non-leading question is one where you're not giving them the answer in your questioning. So a leading question would be, what changes could you make that would impact your schedule? I like to use Google Calendar. That's leading them to saying that, well, I really need to use a calendar. I know I need to use a calendar. So they didn't actually think in that situation. And the fear that people have is that if I go, so the reason people are afraid a lot of times to have conversations is because of the reaction that they can get from the other person. Defensiveness, judgment, harshness, distance in the relationship. And now when you go in to that situation and you let go of that, knowing that if I go in a kind way and get them to think, because that's really the deal, is somebody's in a highly emotional state. They're out of their amygdala, part of the brain that's highly emotional and reactionary. You're getting them to think, which is a non-emotional part of your brain. It's connected to the emotion, but it's the prefrontal cortex where people are rational and processing. So you can see that shift. They're highly emotional. They're very defensive, and you're able to ask them a question like, even what's really going on here? They could respond to that and get really emotional as well. Like, well, you're judging me. You don't really care, but you're actually going to say like, I perceive that something may be triggering you here. Can you tell me what I have said that might be triggering? What might that be? And then they think, and then you always, and I don't want to use that really extreme word always, but if somebody goes to the rational part of their brain, they have to think. And when you're asked a genuine, legitimate, open-ended, non-leading question, the brain does what it's supposed to do. It channels in onto that question. That's why a lot of people don't want to be asked questions, because you can get that with people. They get their natural response is, I don't want to answer questions. They get defensive just to the fact that you're asking them some questions and shut down because they don't want to go there. They don't want to have to think and actually look at the situation in a different manner, which, that's really hard to deal with. But if you remember, even in that situation, you don't want to actually violate boundaries by any means, but by saying, hey, would you just answer, I'm very curious. So they say, they get really defensive and don't want to go there or anything. And like, I'm really curious. It's been on my mind. I think it'd be very helpful for us to have a discussion about it. Here's my question. I'm curious to know what happened, or I'm curious to have an example of what really happened there. And they're having to think and go back. So don't relent. Don't just back off because of their defensiveness, but remember that it provides, the benefit is it's going to provide the transformation, the clarity that people need to transform, and the clarity you need to have to lead to get to the bottom of the situation. So be a curious, question-asking leader. And, if you want to get good at this stuff, I would definitely encourage you to make a list of some open-ended, non-leading type questions that you can ask in these as go-to questions. And they're often going to be starting with what or how, and they're going to require you to step out and focus on them, because something happens in a relationship when they know that you're really genuinely wanting to focus on them and get to know them. It changes the dynamics. They start to realize that you care about them, that you're interested in them. We all want people interested in us. It's very, very contagious. It's very attractive. So the second big benefit is that curiosity is going to eliminate anxiety. Not 100%, but it's very hard to be genuinely curious in somebody in a non-judgmental, non-leading way, and then you really can't be anxious and worrying at the same time. It's like appreciation. If somebody wants to deal with worry, best piece of advice I could give you is to replace it with another vice that can be a really positive vice, and it can be that you're going to focus on what you appreciate in life. And when you're curious about somebody, you're actually expressing appreciation in them. You're showing them that you value their perspective. What's your perspective on this is a great open-ended question. What's your perspective? What ideas do you have? What insight do you have? Great thinking type of questions. So you're going to know the benefit of being curious is that it's going to kill your own anxiety because you're replacing it with something healthy. You're giving your undivided attention. You're getting to know them. Amazing, amazing stuff. And you can do this with your family in those difficult Thanksgiving conversations. Just go in being curious. Go in being appreciative as well and engage. And you can, a question I like to ask people is, have you ever described to me a situation, what is a situation where you laughed so hard that you cried, or you laughed so hard that you peed your pants? Ask that at Thanksgiving. That'll be funny to see your reactions, because people have laughed so hard that they've cried. I can almost guarantee you'll get some answers to that question. That's a curious, open-ended question. And other open-ended questions that are good are, can you give me an example? That's open-ended. It doesn't start with what or how, but can you give me an example? They have to think to give you an example rather than being very generalistic, which very emotional people as leaders, as you lead people, when you have this apprehension to talk to people, a lot of times they're very reactionary and generalistic, but you get them to be specific. Specificity gives people power to solve a problem. Be specific. And another question that's really good is, what one change would make the biggest difference in your life right now? For you to move the needle, and by moving the needle, I mean making progress. What one change would make the biggest difference? They can think about that. And if they pause and they ponder it, or if they say, I need some time to reflect on that, throw your hands up in the air and say yes. I mean, it's a great thing that they're going to take the time to give that question their attention, and they're showing you that they really value that. So a third major benefit is that questions, curious, open-ended questions, connect people. I sit down with family leadership teams. I sit down with business leadership teams. I sit down with ownership teams. I sit down with families who work on these teams. And I sit down with families frequently who are afraid to interact because when they do, it's reactionary and it's judgment and it's sharing your opinion about the situation. Questions don't do that. They connect people because they show people that you want to dig deeper to the real issue and not stay at the surface. A lot of people are very comfortable staying at the surface. Why? Because beneath the surface are the things that they may have not dealt with, or the aspects of their life that they might have some shame or may have some negativity towards. It may trigger some fears if they get below the surface. So they want to act like everything's fine, everything's okay. But we want to get down to a deeper level below the surface. So when clients start a coaching session, teams or one-on-one stuff, I have them fill out this progress form, and it asks them some questions to fill out. One is, what progress have you made? How have you followed through on your commitments? What are you doing to make progress? What are your wins, basically? One question is, what challenges are you facing that might need to be addressed or that could hinder your growth? What's going on there? Another question is, what are you grateful for? And the fourth question, is, what do you want to focus on most today? Gives me some insight and our team some insight on how we can address and coach to process issues that are really holding them back. Great kind of thing. But the next part of that is they assess their life on a scale 1 to 10, their level of satisfaction in each of the 7 Decide Your Legacy life tree areas. So spiritual, family, social and fun, intellectual, career and business, money, and health and self-care. And I'll have them give an honest assessment on a scale 1 to 10. 10 is high, 1 is low. Sometimes, especially at the beginning of the coaching process, as we've worked with people, they'll assess their areas in each area of their life as being really high. Like they'll give it a 7, well, not even a 7, they'll give it an 8 or a 9 or a 10, usually a 9 or a 10. That's a red flag for me because it means that they're not really willing to go. Often it does. I mean, maybe everything is just great and that's awesome, really cool. It's never, I would say that's not the case. I don't buy it. Typically, I don't buy it. Okay, I just don't buy it because if you're stepping back from your life, you have room for improvement. There's levels of dissatisfaction in those areas. So we want to make sure that in questions are those things that get people honest about themselves so they can grow. And when people are willing to ask you the questions, they're the people you can trust because they're the people that are going deeper with you, that want to see the real you so they can help you and be supportive of you. So if we remember those things, it's going to be beneficial to your relationship. Questions connect people, like good art connects people. Art connects people because people can resonate with it in different ways, but they all resonate with it together. So it connects them. They admire it together. They're working on a team together to admire that art, let's say, but they're also working on connecting with each other through sports, through great creative endeavors in a business setting where you're creating something that's going to help more people and help the system to work better. Those can connect people. So questions do the same thing. Another favorite question that I like to ask is, if you had tremendous progress and we were talking in let's say 3 years, we're talking, having a conversation, what are the things in your life, the biggest changes that you would make to get there? And they think, and they may not want to go there because that may mean that they have to admit that they have to make some changes. But if they're honest, they're going to say, I've improved this part of my life. I've made this change. I've hired these people. I've fired these people. Hopefully not, but I've gotten my health up to par. I'm dealing with my finances in a different way. I've made this career change. Something is going to change, and get them to pin them down, even like the 3 biggest changes if you want. But that's going to be a really great thinking activity for somebody, a perspective shift activity, which great questions are perspective shift activities that can help transform your connections as well. So big stuff here. So if you got to check one thing out here. I just got to challenge you as you listen to this is check out Shatterproof Yourself Light. Hit the link and go through this mini course that I put together a while ago. People go through it. Thousands of people have gone through it. And you can go through it as well. It's just watch a 25-minute video that I put together, and I go over seven small steps to a giant leap in your life, a big leap, big progress in your life. And the 7 different life areas I cover there, you have a worksheet to print off or fill out electronically, answer some questions. Good open-ended questions are on that worksheet that will get you thinking, and it's going to make a big difference in your life. Take a few minutes, hit the link, download, even you can go to the app and get the Decide Your Legacy app and watch it there. It takes you through the daily action worksheet, hope versus fear, great content that you're going to want to check out. So questions are powerful. Now, I went and I played golf with one of our other legacy coaches on the team, Sherman, on Sunday. And he's a really good golfer. He's like a +4, +5, he says. And I believe it. We played 9 holes and he shot 2 over. So, and it was really good. And I like his feedback. I mean, we were on the very first hole and I shot a 51. So he shot whatever, a 2 over, a 30, a 38. I shot a 51. Okay. But the very first hole, we were teeing off and I barely hit the ball. I hit behind the ball and shanked it. It went out in front of me maybe 30 yards at the most. And Sherman just said to me, he basically encouraged me, go back, take another shot. And I don't know what he said. I'm trying to think. He said some encouraging things, and encouragement comes in the form of questions and it comes in the form of comments as well. And if he asked me a question, all I know is that I think he asked me a question. I think he asked me an open-ended question to get me thinking about it. And I think he gave me some feedback as well, but he was very non-harsh. And so the reason to close with that is we can approach things, we're giving feedback, and we can approach situations where we're asking questions in a non-harsh, gentle, yet assertive fashion that gives people confidence. Because I was thinking that my whole round is going to be ruined and I'm going to slow him down, and he didn't give me that impression. He gave me confidence. We can give people confidence as we reach out and we engage. So if you found this podcast helpful, give us a rating and review on Apple or Spotify. Check us out wherever you get podcast content. And check us out on YouTube too. We post these podcasts on YouTube live. You can check us out. And some people like to watch the content as well. And if you get to let a friend know that you found this helpful, it will have a big impact as you get the confidence to ask more questions, to be curious. It shows people value how much you value them. So in closing, it's going to create a transformation as you ask curious questions. It's going to decrease your anxiety as you ask curious questions. It's going to lead to the last benefit, which is that you're going to connect with people at a deeper level as you connect through being curious about their lives. So I have this thinking metaphor, this process that I like to think about as I'm getting involved in interactions with new people. And it's the do not make it about me conversation. Because I know that my anxiety increases greatly when I make it about me, how I look, how I come across, how I engage. And if I remember that in conversations, to make it about them, to be curious and get to know them, to remember that I add value as I get to know them, and that as I get to know them and add value and not talk about myself unless it's appropriate, that they're more apt to leave that interaction. And it's going to be my mission that they leave the interaction feeling more inspired, encouraged, energized than when that conversation began. You as leaders can go into interactions and make it your mission and your purpose they leave, even if it's feedback, which I like to think of it as feed forward. It's going to inspire them to move forward, thanks to Marshall Goldsmith. But feedback, you're giving, even if you're giving them feedback, they're going to leave more encouraged and inspired walking away from that interaction. Really exciting thing. So I want to close the way I always do. You are not going to change unless you make the choice to commit and take action. 20% of the transformation or less is insight. You're gaining insight today. 80% plus is action. So what action based on this podcast today are you going to commit to taking and applying to your life, hopefully by the end of the day? So is it a question you're going to ask? Is it remembering that being curious actually decreases anxiety? Is it remembering that it actually inspires other people to change, that you don't have to confront directly? You can confront through questions, and that's going to help them think about things differently. What is that change? So remember that your legacy is the impact you're going to leave on other people's lives. And the word decide means you're eliminating other options. You decide your legacy. So you decide your legacy, nobody else. Make it your mission to live today the way you want to be remembered by others 10 years after you're gone. You decide your legacy, nobody else. I appreciate you greatly, and I'll see you next time.